to the Munchkin Minute, your bi-weekly look into some tabletop gaming news and more. I'm your host, Dan, the Board Game Man, and this is your news for early August 2024. So this being the show after Gen Con, I just wanted to mention some stats and such. So Gen Con apparently broke attendance records for the second straight year, selling out badges and having 71,000 unique attendees. This is up from 70,000 in 2023. Now, I haven't been since 2019, and I remember thinking back then, it was way too many damn people. And I think it was just under 70,000. So they've been steadily going up and right around the same thing. So in my opinion, it's gotten a little bit too big for indie. Don't get me wrong. It's a great con, but there are times, sometimes in some of the other rooms and such, there's not too many people, but there are just times where it's just way too crowded. It's a good city and they utilize their space pretty well because they've kind of taken over some of the extra space in Lucas Oil Stadium, which is the cult stadium right next door. And now they've got some game space over there and such, and they use it very, very well. I just can't help to think that it might need to move at some point. Problem is, I'm pretty sure it's under contract for Indy for at least 2 to 3 more years. And it's going to be very packed for a lot of years, but it's also, again, it's North America's largest tabletop convention. So, but it is a lot of fun, but it is getting quite busy. So, there's some good stats though. I'm very happy for it to have being such a success, and everybody that I talked to that went there had a great time, and the weather was pretty good this year. Sometimes it gets a little bit too hot up there in early August, and this was late July, early August, but so apparently this one was really, really good. So anyway, let's move on today. Let's start today with some more news out of Gen Con. I guess it's a bit of a report, I would say, on the hot games room. So I always love to do my to try and buy list. And last show, I kind of mentioned my 5 for you guys of my top to try and buy. But there's also a post that they put up from Board Game Geek, the BGG Hot Games Room that they have every year at Gen Con. And they had a report of the most checked out games at Gen Con this year. So I'll just talk about the top 5 that were the most checked out. So by a landslide, River Valley Glassworks, that's by the Motor City GameWorks guys and All Play, a great game you can play on BGA. And it is also, I believe, in Target as we speak. It is a lighter game, good family game, but good for gamers as well, but kind of a filler game. Absolutely amazing game. This will be on a lot of people's Game of the Year list because it is that good. River Valley Glassworks. Next was Let's Go to Japan, a really cool, lighter card game or kind of tableau building game about going to Japan. Number 3, Landmarks, which I think also will be on a lot of people's. This was on my list as well. This will be a lot of people's Game of the Year. This is kind of the next iteration of kind of a Codenames type of party game where you're giving clues to other people to try and get them out of kind of this, kind of get out of the jungle, which is kind of leading them to leaving people safety. We don't need a theme. It's just a fun word game. Number 4, Arcs, Conflicts, and Collapse in the Reach. This is the next one by Leader Games. Leader Games, as you know, from Root and Oath. They were a little convoluted and a little bit complex, but some people still really like them, but they're kind of, losing their popularity now. But this one apparently is the game, and I've heard a lot of good things, and this is one that I really think is going to be a big hit, and I think I'm really going to like this one. I haven't played it yet, but it looks to be really, really good. And then kind of a dark horse that I didn't even see on the list anywhere, and didn't jump out at me is The Gang. This kind of has this very co-op way, but you're playing Texas Hold'em co-op. This is really cool, really interesting. 36 players, plays in about 20 minutes, and you're doing different things, trying to play Texas Hold'em and trying to figure out who's got the best hands just by the way everything comes out and looking at your own hand and not really communicating. That's going to be less than $20. It'll be like $15 game. Really unique. I really think this will be a good one. And that is The Gang. That was the number 5 checked out game there in the Hot Games Room. Let's move on. Restoration Games will be crowdfunding a new set for the Unmatched sets next month. This is Unmatched Adventures, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That'll be out next month as far as the crowdfunding goes. I'm sure I'll let you know about it next month. But the last set, that Tales to Amaze set, is really good. And this set will feature the Turtles, and it's going to continue on that amazing gameplay ride, having that cool co-op gameplay that I've been just wanting with Unmatched for so long, and it's really, really good in Tales to Amaze. So I think, of course, this one will be also good solo, but of course, with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's going to be really, really fun. I can't wait to see how it looks when I do get the Kickstarter out. And of course, you're going to be able to play as Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo to take down Shredder or fight off Krang. So that's kind of, you have the multiple bosses that you can use, the different types of gameplay. And it'll be a host of other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles characters. So that looks to be really, really cool. Again, I'll mention it next month when it does go on Kickstarter. A game, back to my try list from last month or last episode from Gen Con, a game that was really high in my try list was the Mistborn deck building game. This is by Brotherwise and, of course, the great John D. Clare. And this week, Brotherwise Games talked about releasing, they kind of teased the release date for Mistborn, the deck building game. This will be out in November of this year. Looking at it, I'm guessing it's going to be about $30 to $35. From the pictures on their site, it looks like this deck builder right up my alley. I mean, not only is John D. Clare, but these cards look like they're going to be triggering off of other abilities and other kind of factions, or I guess the metals that you play on the other cards are going to be triggering off each other. So it's really good kind of tableau or kind of the, again, that's why it's deck building. You want to put care into what you acquire during that middle row or the deck into your deck to trigger those bonuses. And man, I do love me some deck building games with some bonuses and some, kind of combo building there. So Power Grid, one of the most influential games of all time, and it's still in a top 100 at BGG, is now, since it's a very heavy Euro and it's very influential, but now it also put Freeman Freese on the map for monumental designers. He's so good. And now Rio Grande is decided to release Power Grid Outpost, which is kind of the Power Grid in space and maybe kind of an updating of the whole Power Grid thing. This is the space take on it. This will be out in October, and I think it's about $75. It's something you got to really love heavy Euros. And if you do, you're going to want to check it out. I absolutely love Dry Souls Euros. I didn't love Power Grid, but I cannot deny it's really good. It's just not my cup of tea, but it's a really good game. Again, that's why it's still in the top 100. But this is kind of a modernization in space with a new theme. I'm certainly going to look to check it out. I'll try just about anything once. So I want to see if this maybe is more my cup of tea with the new theming and kind of modernization. But again, Power Grid Outpost out this October. Gale Force 9 has a bunch of great games, but also great game accessories that they put out. And they announced 4 new sets at Gen Con for their Tenfold Dungeon line. This should be released either next quarter. I think it's quarter 3, they said, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed out a little bit later fall to quarter 4. They should be out in quarter 3. These are modular box-like boards. Think of like box tops that fit inside of each other, kind of almost like your shoe boxes, but they fit inside of each other, and they make up a dungeon, and they have fully printed terrain and such on them, and even have grids on them for kind of hex grids, not hex, I'm sorry, they're squares, the 1x1 squares, but they're grids on them for you to be playing miniatures and playing D&D right inside of this terrain. Just an amazing idea. And I'm pretty sure each one of these comes with their own adventure, 5th edition adventure in the box, or you can just use them and use them as you see fit in your home games. But they're a really cool idea. They're not very expensive. I'll put a link to which talks about Tenfold Dungeons in the show notes. But the 4 that they released are Wizard Sanctum, Mines of Khazad, Ravenhold Castle, and the Underdark. Some really cool looking boxes there with some, and you can see in some pictures that they've got on their site and some of the press releases that it should be really cool the way it is. I just really like the idea of this. And if you don't have terrain at home and you're just kind of using the theater of the mind, this is probably a good way to get into kind of using terrain or using boxes for the dungeons for you. Really cool idea. So, and as you know, finally, I'm a huge fan of fantasy and dice chucking as well as deck building and such, but more or less dice chucking fantasy and solo co-op stuff. And this last one is a little smaller than what I normally gush over, but I still like all sizes. I usually like the big things like Frosthaven, but WizKids has teased Pathfinder Dice Conquest, where you're going to roll the main 7 different dice types for, basically fighting different monster sets. This is going to be released in March of next year. That's going to have some cards for your character. And again, with each one of your characters going to have some powers. And you're going to have the 7 dice, your main dice you're going to chuck, which of course going to use those on your own, or you can use the ones that come in a game or your own 7, whatever you like the dice. But anyway, it's all the different dork dice that we like to talk about. We say that with all respect because I absolutely love all the dork dice. You're going to have a stack of monsters to defeat before a nice boss battle. Just a really cool, quick, light dice chucking fun. Really looking forward to this one. I think these are only going to be about $20. I'll have a link to their pre-order as well, but it looks really, really fun. Let's head on over to crowdfunding. First up, we've got Kickstarter, So You've Been Cursed. This is from Scott Alms, who always does great job in his games. And I believe the art is by Kwanchai Moria. This is from Ludi Creations. You can get in on this one for about $29. There's a premium version for $39 and a collector's edition for $49. Really cool. They call it This is really interesting. They call it a 0 to 2 player game. The 0 being you can just kind of watch the two AIs, the monster and the wizard, play against each other. But basically, the wizard and a monster are going to face off against each other. Each is the alter ego of the other. And the wizard must obtain ingredients, steal coins, and cast spells in order to find a cure before they fully succumb to the curse. And the monster must eat as much as possible in its quest to satisfy hunger and grow in strength until it's transformed into a legendary creature. Basically, whoever of the two people gets their objective first wins. And again, if it's two players playing the wizard versus monster, or one player playing the wizard or the monster, and then of course 0 players, if you want to just watch the two AIs fight it out and see who wins, should be, that's actually probably kind of fun. But they say it's a good way to learn the game. The production looks pretty cool. Not too big of a game, but it looks like a lot of fun. So You've Been Cursed. Again, I absolutely love everything Scott Alms puts out. Next up, Winds of Numa, Sarah, the board game. This is based on a graphic novel. And this is put out by Morgan Rosebaum, his brother, and then their friends. So it's a very small game company. So I actually love these little, we'll call them the little legends that could, or the little projects that could. It is well funded, but a really cool looking board game where you kind of have some social element to, everybody's got a faction and vying for control. 2 to 4 players playing in 60 to 90 minutes. So you're basically vying for control over this map and such, but there's got some social aspects where you're kind of backstabbing or joining alliances and such. And then there is it's kind of fighting the environment or fighting each other. It says easy to learn and fast pace. It looks really cool little card game. And of course, there's a lot of fighty if that's up your wheelhouse as far as fighting each other. Base game for $59, the deluxe edition for $89. Again, looks really cool. I definitely would say check this one out if you like those sort of games. Winds of Numa, Sarah, the board game. And sticking to lighter, kind of dungeon crawly board games, very lighter co-op. This is Shuffle Dungeons, the co-op board game. The co-op board game of Endless Dungeons. This has got about 3.5 weeks to go. It is funded. This is by Zero Strategy Games. You can get in on this one for about $29. And then there's a Zero Strategy Games bundle. They've got 2 other games, Battle of Mage Farmer and Cutthroat Cove. You can get on that for $63. And there's also the Shuffle Dungeons Deluxe Pack. This is an interesting little game where you're just kind of shuffling up cards, kind of laying these cards to make up the dungeon, and then flipping over the cards and seeing what's in those rooms with some cooperative gameplay. It looks pretty fun. Again, got some dice chucking fun, and it's just very light, very chill gameplay. 8 different heroes, a bunch of different bosses, and a bunch of different dungeon cards. So I like this one. Very light. Again, for only $30. It's a good price to get in for something that's just very much like a beer and pretzels type game. And last up, we'll go to GameFound for the Dungeon Twister 20th Anniversary Edition. So of course, Dungeon Twister being kind of one of the original dungeon crawls. You kind of, it's before a lot of the bells and whistles of all the craziness people put in there. So a very cool dungeon crawl, almost has that feeling of like Warhammer Quest or Talisman, but a little bit kind of beyond that with a little bit more fun. With the dungeon crawl, they've got a few different editions in here. With this Minotaur pledge, it's about 150 euros. Looks like a lot of stuff in that box, and this is kind of an updating and a very much modernization and very upgrading the quality of the game with some other bells and whistles and such. But this one looks pretty cool. Again, the 20th anniversary edition of Dungeon Twister by Ludically looks pretty cool. So definitely check that one out as well. Thanks for joining me today. If you've seen any news you think I'd like to feature, shoot me a message at GeekJockDan on Twitter. And of course, on Major Spoilers Discord, where I love to chat all about different board games. Also, please check out Majorspoilers.com for more content by Steven and the rest of the great Major Spoilers crew. And also check out the Geek All-Stars podcast, where I talk about a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing all at the same time. As always, I am Dan, the Board Game Man, and I'll see everyone in a couple of weeks for another Munchkin Minute.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.